11. I woke with a start. I couldn't say why. There was no noise from outside. In fact, it was strangely much quieter than usual. I shifted through my mind, searching for a dream or a nightmare that might have woken me up, but I have no memories other than of the evening we all just had. Still, a small hard, round ball of dread. Was lunch something were in the middle, and I sat up, resting on my hands, and looked around the small, dark room. Father, maybe that is. Had he cried out in the night? All was silent now, but the thought is enough to warn me. So I carefully pulled my blanket and shipped off, and slipped onto the cold ground. I quickly put on my slippers and pulled on my dressing gown from the hook of the back of the door, wrapping myself up in the mat for warmth. The house was always rigid on winter nights. Heat was for waking hours. Even though I couldn't see my frozen breath from outside, it felt very close. I slipped out into the hallway. I saw something moved out of the corner of my eye. I turned quite quickly to peer into the dark. Nothing, of course. Nothing. Just the darkness playing tricks in with the mind. I took a deep breath to settle my nerves and kept going. I passed Ollie's room and pressed my ear against the door to my parents. Nothing. No hushed whispers or quiet sobs. That was good, but the thrill still sat firmly entrenched in my insides. I carefully, quietly opened the door just a crack, just to see. Mother and father both slept soundly. I could hear their rhythmically breathing now. I felt calmer and relief. I closed the door. I stood for a moment, and then, just to be sure, I went and opened Ollie's door. Sometimes the poor kid would cry out from the nightmare. It was the best if I took care of him in those moments. It was too much of a burden on Mother to have stood another member of her family back to sleep in the dark of the nighttime. I opened the door to an empty bed. My breath caught in my throat. My head felt light. I stared at the sheets tossed to one side. The covers fallen onto the floor. It took me all my strength not to cry out. I was simply surprised. I told myself that was it. I expected to see his little face and then hadn't. That was all. I closed the door. I now had to find him, even though I knew it didn't really matter. I did. It was a small house. He was safe. Unless he had fallen down the stairs, maybe, bumped his head. It was a series of nonsense. I put those thoughts aside. I walked quietly and quickly along the hall, gazing into the pattern to see Ollie. I stopped and stared. No, not the room. No, the room was empty. I took toward it and looked around the door at the bathtub. We were playing hide-and-seek, and Ollie wasn't hiding in the shadows. He wasn't there. I backed up the room and I turned to the corner on my way down the stairs. I stopped. There was a light, a cold flickering in the staircase and downstairs the hallway. It lit face in the ghostly blue, casting long drawn-up shadows in the dirt of the floor. The wall, tall and thin bars like a prison cell. I felt a chill separate from the cold in the house, a chill that came from the deep within. I walked slowly down the stairs, craning my neck to see around the wall. Halfway down, I uncovered the source of the light, the television. Of course, the television was on, but nothing will be on at this time of night, surely. I stepped off at the last step, walked slowly to the arch, and leaned into the living room. I stared. I stayed quiet. I stared, not fully able to understand what I was looking at. I had at last found Ollie. He sat there on the left cross-legged in the middle of the rug, very much of how he had sat during the screaming last night. He was staring at the television, perfectly still, utterly engrossed. Expression was blank, not the giddy joy he had watched the show, but either it was bored or impatient. It was all consumed. I couldn't see in his eyes. He was wearing the glasses, glowed bright in the television light. He just stared at the screen. It took me a moment to even think to look at the television itself. There was something in Ollie's trance-like state that froze me into the bone. Together, we were a pair of the statues. I barely moved to breathe. But again, I saw a movement in the shadows. I was shaking back to the present moment. Once again, I looked, but all I could see was the bright screen and darkness of the drawn curtain behind it. There were no shows at this time of night. Everything was done. The world was asleep, and all that Ollie was watching, flickering, static, just there, just glowing. I turned back to look at Ollie. It was unnerving. His stillness, his focus, the dark that crept around the pool of light, the blackness of the sofa behind him, a father's chair. Ollie? I said softly. I don't know why, but I was nervous to make any sudden noises or sounds. He didn't move. I took a small step closer, still standing in the hall, strangely weary and crossing the threshold into the living room. Ollie? I asked a little louder. I heard a creak from above, and I quickly turned my head to look up the stairs. I didn't want to have woken Mother and Father. No one, just a blank, emptiness at the top. I didn't feel alone, though. I felt very much like something was on the fringes of the senses, something I couldn't quite catch. I couldn't see. I turned back. Ollie was staring right at me. I didn't cry out. I covered my mouth with my hands. I hadn't learned my lesson from the other night, but my heart was pumping fast from the shock. I still couldn't see his eyes. It was from the side of the TV. The glasses almost made it look like he was staring at large round hollows, as if he didn't have eyes at all. I tried not to look at them, instead focused intensely on Ollie instead, crouched, trying to see my sweet little brother, in all strange early goodness. Ollie, are you okay? I asked softly and gently, like I was speaking to a frightened stray dog. He just stared. I bit my inside my cheek, just to feel the sting of pain to stay calm. Ollie, can you hear me? Nothing. I reached out carefully so he didn't move. Didn't even seem to notice my actions at all. I didn't like this. I didn't like it at all. My fingers made contact with the arm of the glasses. In one swift motion, I pulled them off his face. I almost hear what I've seen underneath. As I pulled back, I could see Ollie's eyes, wide as confused, and then he closed them, behind his head down and rubbing his hands against them. Are you okay? I asked again. I moved a little closer. His natural response to glasses coming out comforted me. Gratefully, it gave me confidence. Yes, he said quietly, more to himself as he continued to rub his eyes. He stopped and opened them again, looking first at me and then at the television. Is it over? I asked it. Yes, it was over hours ago, remember? I said. I had moved right next to him and sat cross-legged beside him. I think you might have been sleepwalking, kiddo, I said. He stared at the television in confusion and shook his head a little, then looked back at me. I sleepwalk? It was my turn to shake my head. There was the first time for everything. What time is it? I gazed at the clock on the mantel above the fireplace. It flickered into the glowing artificial light of the snow. 3:30, kiddo, a little gasp. I never been up this late, Rose. I looked back at him. His face was scared. I couldn't help but smile. I felt such relief seeing any kind of expression on it in the first place. I reached out and pulled him into a tight hug. He melted into my arms. I finally felt fully at ease. Well, what do you think about being up so late? Ollie wrapped his arms around me, hugging me back. I don't think I like it. It's spooky. Well, I said, looking back at the dark robe, which still had a glow to it. Spooky. I was definitely appropriated word, but I didn't want to worry the kid. I think it's probably just a television. How about we turn it off and get you back into bed? Ollie nodded to my arm, and together we reached each other to stand. I looked at him just for a moment. His kind eyes had warm but still confused expression. I couldn't help but give his hair a tussle. No! He whined, but he smiled also. Shh, I said. Why don't you get into bed? I'll take care of the things down here. Be up in a minute. Ollie nodded and turned toward the stairs. He was so quiet. You couldn't even hear him climb then. He was so light that even they didn't make a single squeak. Good kid. I turned back to the television and made to cross the room. My foot grazed on something cold. I pulled it away quickly. Thank goodness, too, because I realized only then I had almost crushed extremely expensive 3D glasses. I picked them up carefully, folded the arms back against the lenses. I held them for a moment. There was nothing truly sinister about them. Just glasses. Maybe it's just the lateness of the hour. The staring, the white black circles, empty, emotionless. A shiver went down my spine. I turned now the television, even of this. I walked over and placed the glasses on top of it. Then with one quick motion, I turned up the knob with a satisfying click. The room went dark. I felt a weight of relief. It was strange to find the dark comforting after all these years of dwelling it. But I did it with that moment. And then I felt tired, so very tired. I went upstairs and found Ollie tucked under the covers all the way to his chin. I let out a little laugh. Comfy? He looked at me and nodded. I sat beside him and ran my fingers through his hair. Stay with me until I fall asleep, Rose, he said. He didn't ask it. He didn't demand it, either. There was a small need in how he said it. Of course I will. And so I did, until I could hear his breathing become regularly and see his head fall slightly to the side. I kissed him on the forehead and quietly made my way back to my room. Only then did I lower my voice into my hands and cried.